I grew up in Kent. I went to a grammar school, Tunbridge Grammar School for boys. I enjoyed my time there. I always did things that my philosophy in my career was making big decisions, even going back to doing GCSEs, A levels, and then university. And after that was do something you enjoy. So when I was dyslexic and suddenly decided that I was going to end up doing history at university and read that for 3 years, it wasn't probably the most natural choice, even though maths was my best subject. I did history, but I loved it. And then I went to the University of Sheffield, and I always try to keep myself busy with part-time jobs and internships and experiences, just to try and get a little bit nearer to what was I going to do post-education. And there was kind of a couple of stories. I talk about 4 key jobs which kind of took me to where I am today. The first was washing dishes in a restaurant.
All done that once or twice.
Oh, great job. But I was in a busy enterprise, and I a very entrepreneurial landlord. So I was observing him. And then when I was at university, I was a bartender, and ultimately learning how to speak to people and sell. And when I was thinking about what I was going to do post university, kind of like that kind of proper job, I went into the library at Sheffield and thought, right, I'm going to sort this out today. I'm going to work it out. The big question of what next. And I did 2 things. I thought, right, I'm going to go work in a big company. So I got the Forbes 100 list, and I crossed off all the companies I thought were really boring. And I thought,
how many were on the boring list?
There were quite a lot. I won't name the industries, but I couldn't really. I did a small internship in a bank, and I thought, right, I'm not going to go into the finance world. So that was a quick couple of lines through. And then tech was kind of standing out. Technology, I thought it's fast paced and it's moving. I don't think I'll get bored there. And then I did the same. I got a business map out and go, right, what could I do in a business? And I crossed off jobs I thought which weren't for me. And so then kind of what ended up happening was kind of sales was really shouting out for me in technology. And then when I applied to some of the big firms like IBM, which is where I started my career, it was a bit of a unique way of, why do you want to come work for IBM? I literally told that story, and they were like, okay, logic then. You've got a little bit of logic with your decision making.
What I've heard so far, and this is what interested me before, was, you seem like a relaxed, kind of creative, open-minded sort of person, and yet there is this almost methodical approach to kind of this crossing off of jobs and kind of almost boiling down. And it sounds like a sales funnel in itself. Is that to say that is something that does apply to you, or is that an entrepreneurial skill, do you think, that you have to have?
Well, I think I was talking to someone actually only yesterday about who deals with a lot of startups, because if you look at my kind of career, then that kind of funnel and making logical decisions, it kind of mid-20s becomes a little bit illogical to then throw that away and jump into becoming an entrepreneur in a different sector that you've got no experience in. But what someone said to me yesterday is actually the true entrepreneurs are the ones who are most disciplined, who it's easy to look at the Elon Musks and the Steve Jobs and people like that who get all the fame and attention. They're one in a million, 1 in a billion kind of people. But actually those people which are kind of more like the everyday kind of entrepreneur, they validate, they question really, really well, and they're relentless with it. And they go through, and the reiteration process, they go through not just 5, 10 times, sometimes they go through 100 times. And I think that kind of approach is really, really key. And also fundamentally, you're going to have to sell when you build businesses, and you need to have that methodology and that approach. And that was something was also taught to me, kind of reinforced at IBM, because when I started looking after a client base as a professional seller, you need to work out where you're spending your time. So that's really, I'd say that's a really, really, really important skill that you need.
So in terms of where you went from there, you applied for these jobs, and where did that take you?
Well, I got into IBM, and at the time it's 400,000 people working globally in this massive organization. And I enjoyed it. I was there for 6-7 years. I worked my way up. I was on the kind of director's path for IBM, and I was involved in the problem with professional selling. People kind of have this image of Del Boy. It's not like that when you're learning.
Because it does have a certain sort of the word sales, you talk about marketing and sales, and there's a difference between sales and marketing. And actually sales isn't just about kind of trying to dupe people.
Yeah, look, every company in the world is selling a product or a service, and every company in the world needs sellers. Some companies need digital marketeers, they're more of an e-commerce firm, but traditionally people have bought off people. And when you see the kind of the problem is shows like The Apprentice,
Of
and
course, yeah.
that paints an image of what it's horrendous, because that's what people think it is. They think it's doing one over your customer, and it's not. It's about binding a need. Yeah, it's about finding a need, providing a solution, and building a partnership where that customer trusts you and is gonna buy off you again. And if you're running a multi-million-dollar deal, I think the largest deal I was involved in was about a $12 million deal. There's a science and there's an art behind it. People don't just spend that kind of money because you're a nice guy. You've got to. So that's what I enjoyed.
Sure,
I
they
enjoyed
do.
the boardroom. I enjoyed that kind of negotiation.
You seem to have that as well. And actually, in terms of that, it does springboard another question. Really, is personality, entrepreneurial personality. We've talked about the method, the methodology. We've talked a little bit about this, building a relationship, a partnership, and a connection. But how much of it is personality driven? Because, if we were talking about young people and developing these skills, which is going to be very important, I think, over the next few years, regardless of whether they're doing a job or actually being an entrepreneur, the skills, I think, are transferable. I don't know whether you'd agree with that, but I'm actually wondering how much of this is personality, how much of it can be learnt, and how much of it really is kind of something that people might think that they've already got, if that makes sense, just because of who they are and where they've come from, their background and everything else. So does that make sense?
Yeah, I think
how much of it is personality driven,
Yeah, every entrepreneur is different. Entrepreneurs come in different shapes and sizes. What we see in the media is different, though. You can't, if you hashtag entrepreneur, you'll see the shiny, the shiny suits, or the kind of the what people think about it. But I've got and that's not true. Like, everybody comes in different shapes and sizes, but the consistent thing has to be, you have to have the ability to articulate an idea. You don't necessarily have to shout about it, but you have to be able to articulate it and express it and be yourself. I think if you're not yourself and you kind of go into your shell, it becomes really, really, really hard. Someone asked me, actually, Rob, earlier in the week about gravitas. Like, how do I have more gravitas? I was like, it's not really, it's just taking the foot forward and just learning. It's not really something you can pick up out of a book. It's just being a little bit braver and come forward with your ideas and kind of step up a little bit more.
Sure. And with almost having an inner confidence, or if you don't have that inner confidence, maybe almost, sounds strange, but almost forcing yourself to have that, to step forward. And once you've had that initial success or failure, because let's be honest, everyone says failures are good as well, so in a way it's a win-win. I would think that, but not taking the step perhaps is never going to get you that gravitas, perhaps.
Yeah, just take the first step. I mean, people overcomplicate business. I think people overcomplicate everything, to be honest. I think sometimes you just got to take that step forward, prepared to learn. And I think that what's interesting in the terms of the current climate is the ability to keep going. I think that's more important than ever. Most people talk about entrepreneurs or leaders. Do you have that ability to step, to fail, to pivot, to adapt? You need all that. That's a no-brainer now. The real question is, can you do it 100 times and still have the energy on the 100th first time? Well, firstly, we came up with a kind of kick-ass idea. So that kind of helped at the time. We were talking as a group of friends, and the planet's population was about to pass 7 billion people. And we were coming up with a ton of ideas. And I just said to one of my friends who became a co-founder, I said, isn't it crazy that we talk all the time about these ideas, but we do nothing about them? Why don't we build a business which is about inspiring people to get going on their ideas? And let's call it 7 billion ideas. And everybody was like, that's pretty cool. And then we and then I think coming up with a name straight away, really kind of like, the mind just got carried away. And then I started questioning, I was 6 or 7 years in IBM, and I was looking around a little bit and thinking, yeah, I can have a really safe career here, no problem at all. But what's going to be my impact? If I retire, after X amount of years in the industry, what really have I left behind?
Mm.
And that was kind of playing on my mind a lot. That
And was
it,
that, and
it,
was that as, and talking about what you left behind in terms of legacy, in terms of, you kind of how you feel about things, or do you mean financially, or,
No, it's just how I felt.
or-
I always, yeah, money's always a drive. I never became an entrepreneur to say, look, I want to make, millions. I'm not going to turn down millions of pounds, but it wasn't a financial move. It was more of I wasn't particularly fussed by that. Strangely, I was more, I really want to get out of bed every single day with a ton of energy and just go do something I absolutely love. And when we did an assembly, like we came up with a concept, and then I said, let's go see if kids like it. And I remember going into primary school to do an assembly, and we made up this assembly called I think Big Dream Big Assembly. Let's see if we can come up with an idea that could change the world.
right?
And the kids loved it, and the energy. And I was like, right, this is it. This is a bit me. Like, the kids were
And can
smiling.
can I ask you, because I know people watching and listening would be thinking, "Oh, great, what was in that assembly?" Because I want, can I do it? Can I get someone else to do it? Maybe, bring someone in to do it. What did the assembly, without giving away your secrets? What was the assembly? What did you do?
Well, we started off by just because I had no experience of doing a school assembly at all. I had a few friends, a few friends in the industry said, "Yeah, I think my school would," always looking for different speakers. So I was like, right, okay, I've got a group of a couple hundred kids. I want to try and inspire them. Let's do a little challenge in the assembly, just to prove to them, but when they walk out, that they can come up with an idea which could change the world. So I kind of broke it down. I kind of really opened up with some kind of music and some really cool inventions on the screen, which were quite amusing. So they felt it was different. And then I quickly told the story of what we were trying to do and said, look, I wanted to prove to everybody in that room that they had an amazing imagination. So then I gave them like a minute to come up with a cool idea. Then I picked some kids out, and they came up with like the coolest ideas. And then I was like, right, here's proof. All of you can go change the world. And I was like, right, go have a great Friday. And then they were like, what else do you do at 7 Billion Ideas? And then it was kind of like, what else do you need? What else is going on? And then as soon as we started having conversations like that, it was much easier to leave IBM, really push on 7 Bill, because we were understanding the needs in schools.
Yeah.
And they were telling us the problems. And
what were they? Sorry to jump in again. Because I think this is key. It's fundamental. There's been a lot of change in education. Some will say for good. Many will say we've lost the creativity. We've lost a lot of the arts. We've lost the physical education. A lot of the stuff that would get people working together, thinking, being creative, and allowing those sparks to fly. But what are schools saying? Or are they saying? Were they verifying that, or what was the scenario?
Yeah, I felt there was multiple different things. I think there was like every head, there was like, please help us, come in and help us in whatever environment it might be.
Yeah.
But the two things were really like, we need, inspire our kids, right? Sometimes it's really hard with the national curriculum, the rules and remits around schools for schools and teachers to really kind of do creative projects and have that space, or they don't have massive budgets to bring in people. And they're like, we need our kids inspired, right? And raising aspirations. And then secondly, it was that creative element, and we don't have room to do this. So then it's a case of, how do we find room? And the obvious things was nipping into PHS, stealing PHSC budget time, looking at other parts of the curriculum, and then gradually, really, I guess over those couple of years, I learned that every school that we ever walked in, if you look at the topic of entrepreneurship, really. I can talk about why I believe it's so important, but first things first, every school was doing something, but they just were not strategic in it. And given that 15% of the working population in the United Kingdom are self-employed, and schools are producing more entrepreneurs than any other profession, for me, it was quite staggering why it wasn't. But then I understood, the more I learned about the sector, why it was so hard.
So where did this take you? I mean, how did you formalize this, and for it to become something that essentially was a business rather than just sort of some mates jumping in and doing assemblies? How did that change?
Yeah, well, I guess what happens is once you start to understand the needs, you begin to produce services or products which can meet those needs. So I'd say in the first few years of the business, 2014, 2015, we were doing a lot of learning, a lot of observing, and creating a lot of bespoke projects like, okay, that's your need around the topic of entrepreneurship. But then we realized, and at that time, it meant that we could move from IBM to becoming effectively self-employed as a couple of founders. But our ambitions were to build a business to have a much bigger reach and impact. For us, that was our ambition. So we realized the only way to do that was having more scalable services which could be tweaked depending on the school. So then we kind of reduced it to kind of nail it, scale it approach. Let's nail some fantastic courses, for example, and take them into schools. And when we started doing that, that's when we started to grow more. And then you kind of had that headache, right? Sure. We now need to start hiring good people
no,
to go and do this.
That's a challenge. That is an entrepreneurial challenge because, it's widely known that it can be quite difficult to find the people that you need for the roles that you need, and there's a different kind of skill set now, I think, actually even within sort of companies where theoretically you have a role. But I think this notion of being able to do some technology but also being able to morph into being a little bit of sales, and this ability to network is really important. And I think there's a whole bunch of skills that probably young people may struggle with more than we necessarily realize, I think. So in terms of the courses that you're doing, what were they? What do you do within these courses?
I mean, just on that point, I think it's maybe more than networking. It's the ability to join the dots, because there's, I've never been a networker. I've never enjoyed those kind of events of jumping in a room and speaking to as many people as you possibly can.
Sure. Yeah.
But actually with stuff like LinkedIn, you often find your one or two connections off pretty much everybody. So if you can join the dots and then spot talent as well, if you're trying to grow and recruit people, that really helps. But then in terms of what we did for the students, we wanted to not just be like a one-off program. We wanted to try and build a connection with a student over multiple years. So we started creating courses from effectively Key Stage 2 up to Key Stage 5, and addressing different problems. Around the Key Stage 2, Key Stage 3, it'd be really about broadening horizons, thinking big, dreaming big. How do you come up with that concept and start developing it? And then as we moved into kind of Key Stage 4 area, we talked a little bit more about funding. So we have kind of a really cool course called Unleashing Potential, but we actually look at live crowdfunding businesses, and kids make decisions about whether or not they would back them. And they all start off like uber critical. Never, David, never invest in that. Not interested. Even you go, right, hang on. It looks like it's going to get overfunded. The rest of the world think there's something in it. Let's break into it. And so they have 2 days to analyze it and then make a decision.
2 days, and then, wow.
Yeah, it's brilliant. So we break it down. They end up doing like a SWOT analysis, competitive analysis, marketing analysis on the whole thing.
And then quite deep. It isn't just you guys sort of standing and talking about, inspirational stories about Steve Jobs and whatnot. This is quite gritty, actually, and quite very tangible.
Well, yeah, absolutely. So in the first course, the children would be getting them hands-on as quickly as possible. That course was, funding is one of those kind of, people just think you have to go on Dragon's Den and you can raise a load of cash or whatever it might be. But there's loads of different ways of doing it. And we didn't want to pick out, let's look at what Steve Jobs did for Apple, or let's look at, Nokia, the collapse of Nokia. Let's look at a live business. Let's look at a business trying to make money right
One
now.
That's perhaps more relevant to where they may find themselves, perhaps, as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you look on platforms like Crowdcube, they've got amazing businesses, and it's hard for a 15-year-old not to get interested in one of these new startups and make a decision themselves. But then at the top end, just completing it, we have a course called Reaching Potential, and that's where we kind of started to tap in a little bit more with the corporate world and teaching students that it's not just about being an entrepreneur, starting a business. You have to be creative in businesses as well. And we partner with big companies like Google or Procter and Gamble and IBM as well, where we take kids into businesses and they work on real challenges.
As a teacher, or coming historically from the teaching profession, the first thing in the back of my mind is logistics, time, money, content. I don't have time for that. In the teaching profession, I wouldn't say it's a bubble, but it doesn't have a natural flow with business. You've got so many safeguarding issues, all of those kinds of, anytime you want to run a trip, there's a lot of bureaucracy. So, I mean, how do you physically do that?
And go, right, we want to take kids into a business. First, you need to know how to talk to a corporate, which is like, I do because of my background.
Yeah.
I think a lot of teachers can kind of undersell themselves sometimes and get a bit too worried. These are just people working for a different organization.
Sure. Yeah.
But they have their own red tape, right? But you just need to find people. Every school has a group of parents. Every set of group of parents are working in some interesting businesses and stuff.
Yes, very true.
If you do that filter and find out who in your parent community there is working in a business or an organization which your students might be really interested in, that parent will help, right? I mean, we had a program with Goldman Sachs, and that was because, I didn't have any contacts in Goldman Sachs. We were working with a particular school. We managed to find out, luckily, in that particular school, a VP worked there. And we said, why don't we just speak to the parents, see if they can help us? They were over the moon. And actually, all we needed was, in that particular case, we needed a boardroom for 3 hours. We did the course at the school. And on the third day, we went into the boardroom to talk to half a dozen VPs about the student's idea, about the solution to the problem that they were working on. And the kids loved it and sold it to corporate. So it's kind of that methodology approach. How do we get to that person?
Yeah, it's interesting. I do find that businesses or business people are often very willing to be involved. I think people from business find kind of education, schools, teaching quite fascinating sometimes, because it's been quite a long time probably since we've been in school ourselves, apart from parents' evenings and some of that, and actually that buzz you get when you teach, that is, I think you probably do get it when you do presentations and sales, but I know when you're teaching to adults, often adults have got more barriers and walls. You don't see as much. With young people, you see everything. If they don't like what you're talking about, or you'll know about it because of the facial expression or the kind of the, and if they love what you're doing, you can completely get that too. But going into the recruitment element, quality assurance, because you've come so far, you've got lots of stuff going on, but it's very people oriented. What you're delivering here is not something that just people can tap a button. There's a lot of skills involved in it. What kind of people were you looking for, and how easy are they to find?
Yeah, I mean, as your business grows, someone said to me, get a HR lead early as possible, it gets fifth or sixth employee. Right. And we kind of did that. And because you realize, particularly as a services business or any business, your people are absolutely crucial to living and breathing the values and the culture that you're trying to create. And it's really difficult. So firstly, we did that to make sure that we had someone who knew exactly how to hire people. But then also we would, it wouldn't just be down to Joe's our HR director now at 7 Billion Ideas. It wouldn't just be down to her. It'd be down to us and in spotting talent. And what we ended up deciding to do was, we if we did courses at Key Stage 5 and then we had children like uber interested and keep on asking questions, we just said, look, stay in contact. We started doing that about 3-4 years ago and said, look, stay in contact. After school or after university, if you're still interested in what we do, come and speak to us. And then we started recruiting some kids, not kids now, adults who were on our courses 4 or 5 years ago. And then we started back in the apprentice model as well. So we started, hiring 18, 19-year-olds, very open-minded, ability to do, 3 or 4 different roles rather than just going, that this is my job, this is what I do, and nurturing talent because it takes time. We decided a slightly different approach. We decided to give the apprentice the kind of benefit of the doubt from day one, that they weren't, although they had coming in as an apprentice, they were coming in as a member of the team straight away. Yeah. So we were looking for that conscientious, hardworking apprentice, and there are millions out there, right? They weren't coming in and going, I don't even know how to open my laptop. It was and then also we used a little bit of help. There was an agency that we used who kind of did a bit of the filtering down. We said exactly what we were looking for. Fundamentally, the first apprentice that we were looking for was someone operational to help with the running of our courses.
Yeah.
So someone interested in events management was kind of key.
Okay. Yeah.
So we kind of pinned it down, and then we ended up having like 60 applicants for the first job.
Wow.
They shortlisted it down to 4, and then we had the option of, do you want to make it kind of a competitive apprenticeship where you kind of hire 2 and keep 1? And we were like, that's a bit brutal, but it was obvious. There was a young lady who was just outstanding, and she just came in, Rob, and she's been one of our best hires. And in fact, it was her kind of coming in, just literally eyes wide open. Yeah, what do you want me to do? I'm happy to do it. And she learned quick. And that's what Generation Z do. You can't underestimate. They learn quick. They learn quicker than any of us.
Yeah.
And now at the core of my business,
I'm watching TV with my 16-year-old, and he's on his phone, and we're watching the football or whatever it is. Yeah, football's an example, and he's so into football. But he's on his phone, and I'm like, Alex, you actually watching that? I said, you can't be watching that. And he said, yeah. And then I was, and I was like, Joe, you can't be. Come on. And then he will just tell me what's happened on the football pitch for the last 30 seconds to a minute. I'm like, how do you do that? So, they do have something there. Young people are really great with technology. Okay, are they? Or are they just really good with a particular type of technology, like social media and this kind of thing? Or do people who are nurturing these young people through into jobs, are they outdated themselves? So actually people around my age group may well be only just getting used to doing FaceTimes and Zooms and such like, and yet the young people perhaps have been doing that kind of thing for a long time. So I'm really interested in that big gap and how we close that, because for me that's going to be fundamental over the next 10-15 years of either, as you point out, Gen Z coming in and feeling either frustrated or not being made the most of, and equally the I suppose it's always been an issue that the older generation kind of thinking, oh well, they're scatty and fly by night and they don't have a sense of routine and drill and discipline. And so that, how do we, it's a difficult question, but how do we bring those things together so that, say, in a business culture, you've got that wealth of experience, a bit like a football team or rugby team, you've got the experienced players with the young players, and it all works.
Yeah, you got a lot of spinning plates when you think about skill sets, and so the reason I can answer that question pretty well is in that top course, when we take kids into businesses, we basically release a tender with the business problem, and they respond back to the client with their solution. And every single business, with the first tender we ever did, was how do we attract and retain Generation Z talent? And that was from a big financial services company to a group of year 12s. And then every business we did after, they're like, what was the question you did with that business? Oh, we want to know the answer too. So then we see over a 3-day period, kids researching this problem and pitching it back. And then one of the things which really stood out for me is the kind of the generations above you. So you could work at 21 and join a team in a big business, and you could have a 21-year-old, you could have a 35-year-old, you could have a 45-year-old and a 60-year-old in a team. And then when you go, right, what was the technology that senior vice president had, who was late 50s, a couple of years from retirement, had at school? Oh, they must have had, no, they had nothing, right? They did not have, right. And then you go,
now you're making me feel old, because I remember the nothing days, actually, yeah.
But then you go, oh, well, we had a big box.
And then the BBC computer, the BBC computer was the first thing. Wow, bat and ball on the BBC, if anyone remembers that, but crikey, yeah. No,
and now you have it, and then you start going, okay, well, maybe I can have and then you can see, so it's all about understanding the spinning plates and how you can all work together. So they will never have that kind, because you've had a computer in your pocket since the age of 10, right? They will never have that tech bit, but then equally you will never have that kind of bird's eye view and wealth of experience. So it's all about learning just how to talk to other people and understanding where they're coming from. If you think you know everything, you will be a failure. If you're prepared to jump in and be part of a team, to listen to people, you'll spot opportunities and be successful.
many people have found out through experience, it's actually quite difficult to teach. If you're teaching your own children, they're stuck at home, or you find that that when you're put in that situation, it's really tough. So we know that teachers have got this skill set and this sort of passion for the job. But what happens when the young people are, say, taking information in like my son I was talking about earlier, every 5-10 seconds, then new piece of information, need immediate feedback, bang, 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 and yet the teaching style isn't necessarily nurturing that or developing that. Does that kind of make sense? And then you get discipline problems, and you get learning slowdown rather than learning acceleration. So again, it's another area I'm interested with, this generational thing. Is there a way through the kind of methodology that you've been developing that can help the profession to use that to tweak their teaching styles?
Yeah, it's interesting. I was talking to a new organisation which has been created called Time for Change, which is kind of lobbying, big change in the sector. And I said, my personal opinion is we've got to have a better view of what we want education to look like in 25 years' time. Yeah. And then go on this journey of kind of accelerated incremental improvement to get there. I don't know, what exactly it will look like in the future, but I do know that the whole idea and philosophy behind a school now does need to change because of exactly this. There are other ways of learning. 20 years ago, you got the bus to school, you went to school, that's where you learned, you took some books. Now it's like this. Yeah. We're in an Amazon generation. You order something, you can turn up in 2 hours. It's bonkers. Yeah. So what is a school for? Is it about knowledge? Is it about community? Is it about, let's not be frightened of the school of education changing. Let's embrace it. Let's just deal with that question of what is a school building for, and that community, and break it down so everybody understands. My personal opinion is, as we kind of move forward out of the kind of global situation and we go into 2021, I think it's really, really, really exciting because we've moved from a Model A to a Model B. Model A wasn't working. Model B's not been perfect, and we've got the opportunity to create Model C. That was a quote I've nicked from a lady called Rebecca Tier, and it kind of sums it up perfectly.
I will nick it from you as well.
Yeah, because I think it's now going to be acceptable, Rob, for a child to go to 2 schools. I think it's going to be, I go to a physical school. This is my school. This is where I go, but I also am part of another school, another world where I'm learning about other things. And that's where we're trying to head as a business as well, because I think come middle of next year, I think it's going to be, a kid can do that because there's going to be certainly a core group, and there's going to be a lot of children who've got that thirst for learning quickly. Yeah. And we can't underestimate.
And independently, there's quite, I think, again, what perhaps over the years we've formalized independent learning to a point where we say we're going to teach them to be independent learners. Actually, I think a lot of young people are independent learners already. They wouldn't necessarily know it or categorize it in that way, or teachers wouldn't necessarily. So an area I'm quite interested in is how we tap into what they're already doing, almost, if that makes sense. What are they already doing, and picking that out and then adapting our styles to them, because just enforcing the way we did it or the way we know I don't think is going to work. Where do we go from here? Because things are different now. Pointed out about Model C, the opportunity side of things. What do we do? Because we're not in a situation necessarily where we have loads of money and loads of kind of opportunity, if you like, to just get on with things as we normally would.
Yeah. And so one thing which really got my brain ticking was actually watching what Joe Wicks did in lockdown. At one point, he had 1 million children going through arguably a PE lesson, right? For half an hour. And my brain was ticking. I was like, this is an inspirational, quality guy doing something fun, and 1 million people are tuning in, and they're tuning in regularly, and they're learning from him. They're learning how to stretch, they're learning how to exercise, they're learning to do whatever. This isn't to put PE teachers out. But my immediate thought was, how much would it cost to actually run a lesson for 1 million children face to face? And I started doing some numbers, and I was assuming the preparation time, and then you get them down there, and you're talking millions, hundreds of thousands of pounds to run a PE lesson on a Friday morning across the UK. And I thought to myself, what if some of the most inspirational people were doing these lessons? What if Barack Obama, Rob, did a public speaking lesson? How many people would tune in and listen to that? And that's when my brain got ticking, and I was just listening and observing. And I was, after Rebecca said that kind of Model C to me, I was thinking, right, next year, let's fast forward, okay? And we will go back to what we were doing. That's what people do. And then you're going to need disruptors, a second wave of disruptors who are saying, look, this isn't good enough anymore. And my personal opinion, the question now needs to evolve is, like, we've learned from tech. Everybody, Nicky Morgan on something we did called Unlocking Education, said we've kind of advanced 14 years in 14 weeks with what happened in the summer term this year in terms of schools adapting. There was a lot of benefits from it. There's a lot kids can learn. Let's stop talking about screen time. Kids are on their phones, TVs, they're on them all the time. So let's embrace it. It's just time. And therefore, I genuinely think it's not that it's a collective discussion where we go, right, what is a school, the physical building, the community? What is that fundamentally for our children in education around the world? And let's not overcoat it. Let's just go, that's what we want to achieve. And then let's also go, right, let's monitor let's give them a new world to get excited about, that second school.
A challenge though on that. So the Joe Wicks thing, I said I gave it a miss, mainly because put a few pounds on. I didn't particularly want to admit that to myself at the time. But no, it was an important thing that the nation needed at that time. I think where the challenge has come with that though is that it's quite instructional. It's I say you do. There's very little interaction. Most people will now see that the modern physical education curriculum and development is actually less about learning to stretch, which you can do on YouTube, and it's much more about critical thinking skills, life skills, leadership, mixing with other people, being creative, creating your own tasks with other people, changing game rules, a whole bunch of stuff that gets the brain firing in 100 different ways, which many of the arts and less academic subjects can do. So whilst I'm not saying that there is no place for that, I suppose the challenge is how you take that medium of somebody with 1 million people and make the best of it, make the most of it, because obviously there's a collaboration element that's missing. So perhaps there is scope to be thinking, well, how do we use this technology to leverage collaboration and to think differently about how we're even using technology now, because we've hit, I believe, we've hit a little bit of a plateau. People have learned how to use Zoom now. Some of us have been using it for a long time, this type of technology, and then this whole scenario changed where the world kind of started to use this technology and it's become ubiquitous and it's a normal thing. The danger is we plateau and think that this is now what we do, rather than taking it on a step and thinking, hang on a sec, how do we create those uniquely human interactions and collaborations through the use of this technology? Now, I wouldn't expect you to have the answer to that specifically, but for me, that's a really important area.
Yeah. This isn't a case. My suggestion here isn't now, charge us to sit in their bedroom and we can teach them everything. I think that there's so much, the collaboration, the teamwork, the being in school. That's what's. I think if you use, I think it can all work together. Doing ticking boxes in different ways. Our big lesson. So what I'd say is it got me thinking the Joe Wicks model. That was really interesting. That a lot of kids were stimulus kind of different way. We took a course to market pretty quickly called Home Hack, and which was a virtual course. But what we were really keen was to make it live and interactive. And our MPS score, which is like how highly would the children recommend it, kind of went past 50. Basically, by the end of the time we were running it, was like 9 out of 10, which is incredible score from kids who could give it 0 all the time. But what we realized was we moved towards having this at the start of the summer holiday, for example. We had 4-day courses, 4 hours a day, quick fire. but it was entertainment education as well, Rob. We had two
Yeah.
people on screen,
Yeah.
and the kids were building a connection with them, and they had opportunities to ask questions and interact. So, that kind of live bit.
Fascinating. Yeah.
And my feeling is, I haven't read all the research into the impact of kind of the Oak Academy, but one of the blogs I did read was about, there was a lot of it was doing really well, but what kids really missed was that personalized bit. So if you can go to the virtual world and keep the personalized bit, then you're in a really powerful space.
Yeah, I think that's another area. Again, I don't really mind saying this, is that when everybody started using lots of tech, I think teachers and business people needed to play with that and to find that they can, I can use it. I can talk to you. Look, I can see you through the screen. There was a lot of that going on, and then before it became normal. And my take on it, though, is that people can very quickly narrow into instructional, and so you get PowerPoints being talked over with relatively poor audio, and you don't see the face. That's at one extreme. The other extreme is kind of just random ramblings, if you like, that don't necessarily create that interaction. And then there's a sweet spot somewhere there where I think thousands of teachers in the education sector did manage to get these pockets of excellence, that perhaps now has an opportunity to share this excellence, where people are getting further towards creating the uniquely human interactions that we're used to. And let's not forget that through the screen, it's pixels rather than real color. It's 2 dimensions rather than 3 dimensions. There are no smells. There's nothing congruent or contextual. So I think the next thing, when we grow up, I'm sure I'm a few years older than you, David, but we had, I think it was called smell-o-vision, wasn't it? I don't know. You'd have sort of scratches, so you could interact in this way. We've got VR, but you've got to wear big goggles. But maybe there's something in the future there in what you've been doing that doesn't need gimmicks and smell-o-vision and goggles, maybe. Actually, because I was struck when I saw your courses and on your website and such like, that they were these 4-hour hits. I'm thinking, well, what happened to the kind of what the norm is, which is you log in, you get some questions, you watch a video, and you'll tick the box. There's a place for that. They are really useful. But that's what most online courses are. So what you're doing here is unique, I think. I mean, there were probably other people doing it, I don't know, but I've not seen anything like this. So for me, you're on the cusp of something which is potentially going to change the whole way in which schools and teachers can interact, and that whole upskilling question is perhaps embedded in this approach.
Yeah, and absolutely. So you just think about, actually, could we triple or quadruple the amount of time a child is learning in a week by just using tech? So they're going to the physical school to learn X, Y, Z, and that X, Y, Z might not be knowledge. It might just be about being a person in a busy community. Let's just be brave and not see it as the outside looking at education and trying to cut teachers, all this. It's not that. The truth is, we've got to look at it a longer term. We've got to question the actual reasons we have schools. Could go back to basics and all agree this is the fundamental basic of a school. Then also agreed that it's now acceptable and we should take responsibility of those other gaps and opportunities to learn. And if we and that's virtually right. You've also got the third dimension about what is the parent doing at home to help with nurturing that child. That's down to them. But that second area we can't ignore. If we ignore it, we're going to miss a big opportunity. But if we get it right, and if we get it personalized, and we remember that child will want to talk to someone, will listen, they'll learn quicker. But if you have that little bit of talking and interaction, it can be quite powerful. So that's why I'm dead excited about the future, because I just think, fast forwarding, I think the we're going to accelerate and find triple or quadruple more time in a week to teach, but it's going to change, and teachers have got to go on that journey. They've got to be brave for it. There's going to be opportunities for the education community to really shape it or jump it
and breathe a little bit with it. Enjoy playing with it, and actually not feeling like we have to be perfect and instruct everything and get as much information. It reminds me a little bit, or at times it reminded me a little bit of when we had a different regime when I was coming through as a teacher, and we would just constantly petrified, but you had to get all your marks in all your books and everything, because you had to show somebody. Ofsted would come in, you have to show these swathes of evidence that you've done stuff, and then it changed a lot into more the the impact that you're making, and they don't want to see all that stuff necessarily. They want to see top line data, but they want to see how you're teaching and how you're interacting. And it reminded a little bit of this. We must get this information through the screen. Actually, it's more than that, and it's this, how, you know, going back to probably the start of our conversation around skills, and you can develop entrepreneurial skills through this medium. And it seems like you're blazing a trail. So what is next?
Well, we are going to become 8 billion ideas very shortly. Our mission statement's about going to be giving every student the skills and belief that they can change the world. You know, a key skill there is entrepreneurship and that creative mindset. So it's not about churning out millions of entrepreneurs. It's about, can you be entrepreneurial in whatever organization you work in? Because we feel the rise of the startup, the micro business is on the horizon. I think with a global recession, bigger businesses shrink and startups. So kids, every kid, in my opinion, and I'm sorry, you know, from a COVID point of view, the vast majority of kids will not be impacted by COVID from a health. They will impacted from financially, because that's when they're going to enter a market.
100%.
So we want to make sure they have those skills. So we're going to be launching 8 billion ideas, which will be this online school for kids, but it will be producing 4 pieces of content. It will be regular podcasts, regular videos, regular videos, self-paced courses, but the live courses, we're going to have loads of them. So kids can tune in, book in, and feel like, you know, they go to the school down the road and they go to 8 billion ideas. And we're going to really try. We just
so it becomes part of the whole ecosystem rather than a bolt on. Is that kind of the aim here?
Absolutely. We're not competitive. We're adjacent to what's happening in the school. In fact, we're here to help, right? When I talk to heads about their challenges with Gatsby, Ofsted,
of course,
ISI, you go, it's impossible, right? Let's help those kids in those schools and those heads in those schools, teach them of those skills in a slightly different, cooler way. That's basically where we're heading.
And I want to thank you very much for your time this morning, because I know you are a very busy man.
Thank you, Robert. So I enjoy talking about this, and mainly because we're so passionate about it. But I guess I'll leave on one story. We employed a young man in our business recently, and I have no idea what grades he got. Absolutely no idea. You know, I assumed he went to school. He did go to school. He did do his A-levels. But his ability, his soft skills, his ability to be creative, his ability to join the dots, it was just obvious. And that's what, you know, I just generally, you know, I know it is important you go through these as a milestone. It's important you build that knowledge. But what you're really looking for is, when a child leaves school, have they found something that they're passionate about? Do they believe in themselves? Are they a little bit closer to their why? That is the purpose of a school, in my opinion. And, you know, if we can just keep that at the forefront of what we're doing in education, you know, I think, and I think also if heads can be bolder and kind of in the future forget about the exam table, I'd much rather a head think about, when I walk down a high street in 20 years time and someone taps me on the shoulder, it's a student from my school saying thank you because I'm now doing something I love. I think that's how, you know, that's the mindset. Try and not be so deep in the problem and go, there's a bigger game here. And I think that's what a lot of people go into education. So look, mate, thanks for your time. I hope that's been interesting.
Thank you. Really appreciate it, David, and good luck.
Thank you. Just shout if I can help out with anything, guys. Get me on LinkedIn, and have a great day, everyone.
Absolutely brilliant. Thank you. Cheers. Take care. Bye-bye.